Joining me now is Hogan Gidley, Principal Deputy Press Secretary. Thank you for being here, Hogan. Good to have you here this evening. I want to start with this. This is the president today in the Oval Office talking about this whistleblower. Watch this.
In other words, he either got it totally wrong, made it up, or the person giving the information to the whistleblower was dishonest. And this country has to find out who that person was, because that person's a spy, in my opinion.
All right, so just to clarify here, the whistleblower is not the person who was in the White... The whistleblower essentially says that people tipped him off to this phone conversation, people who work in the White House. Is that your understanding? And do you believe that perhaps the person, or it's been suggested that there's more than one person, is still working in the White House?
Well, we don't know, and I think that's part of the issue, and that's part of what the president was talking about there. And I think we deserve to know what's going on in the building, and the American people do as well. And I have to say, this whole process has been completely ridiculous and propped up by a complicit and compliant mainstream media to the Democrat Party without facts. Listen, Adam Schiff lied about having quote-unquote stone-cold evidence about Russia collusion. It wasn't called to task for it. He lied when he passed his own words off as President Trump's to Congress and the American people in the transcript, and he lied about this whistleblower, as you played the video on September 17th, saying he didn't know anything about it. This is far past disingenuous. It's far past dishonorable. This is dangerous, and it's got to come to a stop.
Well, I think that those two incidents are clear marks against Adam Schiff in this whole equation.
But it's more than that. It's more than that. That was three I listed. And don't forget, he was the one who listened to someone from Russia who said they had pictures of Donald Trump. Do you remember this audio that surfaced? And then he said, no, we didn't follow up, but his staff did follow up. This is lie after lie after lie, and the media keep putting Adam Schiff on the same par with anybody else who has any shred of credibility. His credibility is gone, and he needs to be held to task for it.
All right, well, let's shift over to the other side of the equation, which is the sort of single most important part of the transcript. I know the president said that the transcript, tells the whole story and exonerates him. But the part of the transcript where he specifically talks about Joe Biden and wanting the Ukrainians to look into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and that he should talk to Rudy Giuliani about that. Does the president still believe that Rudy Giuliani is the right point person for Joe Biden and the Hunter Biden investigation that he wants so much?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats actually cared about getting to the bottom of what happened in the 2016 election. That's what the president's talking about here.
But I'm talking about the 2020. What's the connection between Joe Biden and what he and his son may or may not have done and the 2016 election, specifically Joe Biden and 2016? What's the link?
Well, right, but this doesn't have anything to do with the 2020 election, and the president was very clear about that, and that wasn't in the call. What else wasn't in the call was the quid pro quo. But let's be clear here. I don't speak on behalf of Rudy Giuliani, but I can tell you that Rudy Giuliani has been the president's personal attorney for a long time, and Donald Trump, when he was just a citizen, not elected to office yet, was the center of a Russian witch hunt hoax scam perpetrated on him as a private citizen.
Right,
so it would make sense that Donald Trump would want someone to look into that.
I understand all of that, but you haven't answered my question about what the connection is between what the president wants to learn about Joe Biden, specifically, from the Ukrainians, and his concerns about the origins of the 2016 election. I mean, I know about the server, I know about Hillary Clinton, all of that stuff that people are concerned about with regard to the origins. But the link with Rudy Giuliani and Joe Biden is what has obviously raised this impeachment question. And that is one that the president was asked to address today. And, I think there are still questions about that.
Well, first of all, I'd reject the premise in the sense that
in what sense?
This has nothing to do with Rudy Giuliani. I mean, the Democrats have been talking about impeachment before Donald Trump was actually sworn into office, and they've done it countless times. So to pretend that this is some impetus or jumping off point to have a conversation about impeachment just isn't true. But the fact is, I think the American people deserve to know exactly what was going on with Ukraine and with Joe Biden and with Hunter Biden. And Donald Trump ran on rooting out corruption. And if you'll remember, it was President Zelensky of Ukraine on that call who talked about draining the swamp. Well, what's swampier
Yeah, no, the corruption
than the
part
son
of
of
it,
privilege
I agree with
getting
the whole
$50,000 a month from a
part of
foreign
the
government
conversation
talking about issues he knows nothing about?
Is perfect, as the president said. It's that one section that is the thing that is the laser focus on in terms of this broader question here. Let me ask you this. The Washington Post is reporting tonight that the president pulled Vice President Pence from attending Zelensky's inaugural as part of a plan to pressure him to get more information on Joe Biden. What do you say to that?
That's absolutely ridiculous. This is such a hoax, and it's been perpetrated by the media from day one.
So why was he told not to go to that inauguration then?
It's my understanding there were several scheduling conflicts, and we sent somebody there. And let's not forget, while Rick Perry actually went to that event on behalf of the United States, we also gave Ukraine aid, which is something that I can say that's more than more than Barack Obama ever thought about doing, as you well know.
That's very true. That's absolutely true.
Yes, we gave them lethal aid. Barack Obama sent them pillows and blankets.
All right, that's true. I want to give you two more quick things to respond to here. This is Vladimir Putin, who was asked at a panel discussion a question about the 2020 election. Just watch this.
Is Russia, as Robert Mueller alleged, attempting to influence the 2020 elections in the United States?
I'll tell you in strict confidence, yes, we are definitely going to do it to make you finally laugh properly. Don't tell anyone, okay?
I mean, obviously he's on an open mic, making fun of the whole thing. But any thoughts on that, Hogan?
Well, look, we're the only ones that actually took Russian meddling seriously. It was Barack Obama who discovered Russia was trying to meddle in our 2016 election and did nothing about it. We've implemented safeguards in place that haven't been done in the history of our country, a whole of government approach at the state level, at the local level, bringing in DHS and the FBI, running testing to make sure that everybody's vote counts and that it's sacred.
All right. One last question on a totally different topic here. There's reporting tonight in the Wall Street Journal that the DOJ is planning to collect DNA from migrants who are in custody and to put that in a national criminal database. Can you comment on that? Is that true?
I've not seen the report, but I do know that this administration does want to secure our southern border in many different ways, and we're looking at all types of avenues to do that. The fact is, people scam our system, and they have been doing it for decades, as you all know, and have chronicled on your show. And we're looking at every avenue to protect the American people and also prevent the horrific actions of human smugglers and child smugglers and drug cartels who use and abuse so many people to try and get into this country. And we deserve the right to know who's trying to get in here.
All right. Hogan Gidley, as always, thank you very much. Good to go through some of this with you tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.